When my daughter-in-law told me, "Linda, maybe it's better if you don't come by without calling first," I smiled. I didn't cry. I didn't. A single choice can change your life forever. Today, I'm sharing how betrayal forced me to choose myself when no one else would. Before the first chapter unfolds, please subscribe and hit like to help us reach others who might need to hear this. I'd love to know where you're watching from tonight. Leave your city name in the comments so I can welcome you personally. And now, the story begins. I didn't argue, I just smiled and said, "Of course, sweetheart." But when I drove home that night, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Because the truth is, that wasn't the first time I felt pushed away. It was just the first time it was said out loud. My name is Linda Carter. I'm 64 years old. I live in a small town in Ohio. I've lived here almost my whole life, and for 35 years, being a mother was the most important part of who I was. My son, Daniel, used to call me every single day, even when he moved out, even when he started his first job in Chicago, even when he said he was too busy. He always called, until he didn't. At first, I told myself, he's married now, things change. I wanted to be the kind of mother-in-law no one complains about, the quiet one, the supportive one, the one who gives space. But space slowly turned into distance, and distance slowly turned into silence. When I called, it often went to voicemail. When I texted, the reply would come hours later. Short, simple, cold. And when I visited their house, something in the air felt different. Emily, my daughter-in-law, always smiled, but her smile felt careful, polite, measured, like she was holding something back. I kept asking myself, did I say something wrong? Did I cross a line? Because when your child begins to drift away, a mother always blames herself first. What I didn't understand at the time was this. I wasn't losing my son all at once. I was losing him slowly, and he didn't even notice it was happening. I raised Daniel mostly by myself. His father and I divorced when Daniel was 9. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no court battles. Just two people who realized they were not meant to grow old together. After that, it was just me and my boy in our little 2-bedroom house. Money was tight. I worked as a receptionist at a dental office for over 20 years. I packed his lunches. I helped with homework. I sat in cold bleachers during football games. I never missed a single one. Every night, we ate dinner together at the kitchen table. Sometimes it was frozen pizza. Sometimes it was homemade meatloaf. But we always sat together. "Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to buy you a beach house," he used to say. And I would laugh. "Honey, I just need you to visit me once in a while." He was a sweet boy. Gentle, sensitive, protective. When I got sick one winter with the flu, he stayed home from school to take care of me. He was 16. That's the kind of son he was. When he moved to Chicago for college, I cried for days, but I was proud. He called every night that first week. "Mom, you wouldn't believe the size of this campus." "Mom, I burned pasta tonight." "Mom, I miss your cooking." And I would sit on my couch smiling at the phone like a teenager in love. Years passed. He built a career in marketing. He worked hard. He made good money. Then one Thanksgiving, he brought Emily home. She was beautiful, confident, smart. She worked in finance. She spoke clearly, directly. She shook my hand firmly the first time we met. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Linda," she said. I hugged her instead of shaking her hand. "I've heard so much about you," I told her, and I meant it. She seemed perfect for him, strong where he was soft, organized where he was relaxed. They got married 2 years later in a beautiful outdoor ceremony in Illinois. I remember watching them say their vows. I remember thinking, he looks happy, and that was enough for me.
After the wedding, I made a promise to myself. I would not interfere. I would not criticize. I would not become that mother-in-law. In the beginning, they visited once a month, sometimes more. I would cook Daniel's favorite meals: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, apple pie. Emily would sit at the kitchen island scrolling through her phone while I cooked. Sometimes she offered to help, but she never really did. I told myself she was just tired from work. But little things started changing. Daniel stopped staying as long. He checked his watch more often. If I asked, "Can you stay for dinner?" he would glance at Emily before answering. Just a quick look, but I saw it. One Sunday, I showed up with homemade cookies. I used to do that all the time when he was in college. Emily opened the door. "Oh, we were just about to head out." I stepped back. "Oh, I didn't know." Daniel came to the door behind her. "Mom, you should have called." The words weren't harsh, but they were different. I drove home with the cookies still on the passenger seat. After that, I started calling before visiting. Sometimes Emily answered his phone. "Daniel's in the shower." "Daniel's in a meeting." "Daniel's resting." I would say, "Okay, tell him I called." Sometimes he called back. Sometimes he didn't. Then one evening, Daniel called me himself. "Mom, Emily feels like you don't really like her." The words felt like ice water. "What? Why would she think that?" "She says you're distant, that you don't try." I sat down at my kitchen table. "I've been trying not to bother you." There was a long pause on the line. "Mom, we're building our own life now." I swallowed. "I know." After that conversation, I started watching myself carefully. I measured my words. I shortened my visits. I stopped giving advice, even when they asked. But somehow, it never felt like enough. If I gave Daniel a birthday check, Emily would say, "You don't have to baby him." If I asked about their weekend plans, she would say, "We're pretty busy these days." Busy. That word became a wall. And slowly, I began to hesitate before calling my own son. I would hold the phone in my hand, then set it back down, because I didn't want to feel like I was interrupting his real life. And one night, sitting alone in my quiet house, I realized something that scared me. I was starting to feel like a guest in my own son's heart.
The distance did not happen in one big moment. It happened in small pieces, little shifts that almost looked normal from the outside. But inside, I felt every one of them. After that phone call where Daniel told me Emily felt I did not like her, I became careful, very careful. When I visited, I complimented her home. "This place looks beautiful," I would say. She would smile. "Thank you. I like things a certain way." I noticed that every picture frame was perfectly straight, every pillow perfectly placed. It was a lovely home, but it did not feel relaxed. It felt managed. One Saturday afternoon, I offered to help in the kitchen while she prepared lunch. "I can chop the vegetables," I said gently. "Oh, I already prepped everything," she replied without looking up. "But thank you." So I stood there for a moment, not knowing where to put my hands. Daniel walked in and kissed her on the forehead. "That smells amazing." I smiled. "It does." But he did not look at me when he said it. The first real crack came during Christmas. Christmas had always been our holiday. When Daniel was little, we would decorate the tree together. We had ornaments from every year of his childhood. One with his tiny handprint, one from his first Little League season. Even after he moved out, he would come home on Christmas Eve. We would bake sugar cookies and watch old movies. That year, I called in early December. "So what's the plan for Christmas?" I asked, trying to sound light. There was a pause. "Actually, Mom, we're spending it with Emily's family this year." "Oh," I said. "Of course. They already bought the plane tickets." "That's wonderful," I told him. "Family is important."
After we hung up, I sat very still on my couch. I understood sharing holidays, I truly did, but something inside me whispered, "This is the beginning." On Christmas Eve, my house was silent. I still put up the tree, I still baked cookies, out of habit, out of hope. I placed Daniel's childhood stocking on the mantel, then I stared at it for a long time before quietly putting it back in the box. In January, Daniel's calls became shorter. "Mom, I'm heading into a meeting." "Mom, can I call you later?" "Mom, we're just stepping out." Later rarely came. One evening, I finally asked him, "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, why wouldn't it be?" "You just seem busy." "We are busy," he said, a little sharper this time. "That's normal." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yes, I suppose it is. But I knew my son's voice. I knew when he was tired. I knew when he was stressed. And I knew when he was repeating something he had heard before. Then came my birthday. Daniel never forgot my birthday. Not once in 35 years. This time, the day passed quietly. No call in the morning, no text. I told myself he was working. By evening, my heart felt heavy. At 9 o'clock, my phone finally buzzed. "Hey, Mom, sorry, it's been crazy today." "That's okay," I said quickly. "I know you're busy." Emily's voice floated faintly in the background. I couldn't make out the words. Daniel lowered his voice. "We'll celebrate soon." "We don't have to," I said softly. After we hung up, I stared at the blank television screen. I did not cry. I just felt replaced. The tension grew quietly. One afternoon, I stopped by with a small housewarming gift, a set of hand towels embroidered with their last name. I had seen them on sale and thought of them. Emily opened the box and smiled politely. "Oh, that's thoughtful." But later, I saw the towels still folded in the box on the counter. They were never used. It was a small thing, but small things add up. A few weeks later, Daniel came to visit alone. For a moment, my heart lifted. He looked tired. There were faint lines on his forehead I had never seen before. We sat at the kitchen table with coffee. "How are you?" I asked. "I'm fine." He stared into his cup. "Are you happy?" I asked quietly. He looked up quickly. "Of course I am. Why would you ask that?" "I don't know. You just seem different." He leaned back in his chair. "Mom, you always think something's wrong." The words stung. "I'm your mother," I said gently. "That's my job." He sighed. "Emily feels like you don't approve of our choices." My heart dropped again. "What choices?" "Everything. Where we live, how we spend our time. She feels judged." "I have never judged her." "I know you don't mean to, but sometimes it feels like you want things to go back to how they were." Silence filled the kitchen. Maybe I did. Maybe I wanted my son to look at me the way he used to, but I never wanted to compete. "I just miss you." He stood up soon after that. "I have to go." The visit lasted less than an hour. Spring came, but it did not feel light. One Sunday, I saw photos online. Daniel and Emily at a family barbecue. Her parents were there, her siblings, cousins, everyone smiling around a long table. The caption read, "Sunday with family." Family? I stared at the word for a long time. Was I no longer included in that meaning? Then came the dinner that changed everything. Emily invited me over. That surprised me. "Just the three of us," she said over the phone. "We thought it would be nice." Her tone was smooth, careful. I brought a pie. When I arrived, the house looked perfect as always. Candles lit, table set beautifully. Dinner was polite. Too polite. We talked about work, weather, traffic, but underneath the small talk, something was waiting. Halfway through the meal, Emily set down her fork. "Linda," she said calmly, "we need to talk about boundaries." The word felt formal, sharp. Daniel shifted in his seat, but said nothing. I feel like sometimes you rely on Daniel too much emotionally. She continued. I blinked. I'm his mother. Yes, she said gently, but he's my husband now. There it was again, the quiet claim. I'm not trying to take him away, I whispered. No one said you were, but we need space to build our own life without feeling watched. Watched? I looked at Daniel. He avoided my eyes. Do you feel watched? I asked him quietly. He hesitated. Sometimes, he said softly. That word broke something inside me. Sometimes. I had spent my life protecting him, and now my presence felt like pressure. I never meant to make you uncomfortable, I said, my voice barely steady. Emily nodded. We just think it would be better if visits were planned and maybe less frequent, for now. For now, but I understood what it really meant. I finished dinner quietly. I thanked her for the meal. Daniel walked me to my car. Mom, please don't be upset, I said. I'm not upset. I was something else. Something deeper. I drove home slowly that night. The streetlights blurred in my eyes. For the first time, I realized this was no longer about misunderstanding. It was about replacement. And the most painful part was this. My son truly believed he was just building a marriage. He did not see that step by step he was being guided to see me as a problem, and I was losing him, not to anger, not to hate, but to quiet permission.
After that dinner, I did what they asked. I stopped dropping by. I stopped calling unless he called first. I told myself this was what loving a ground child looked like. Quiet, respectful, distant. The first week was the hardest. Every evening around 7, I would glance at my phone. That had always been our time, the time he used to call after dinner. 7 came and went. The house stayed silent. I tried to fill the space. I started walking in the mornings. I joined a small book club at the local library. I told myself I needed my own life. But no matter how busy I made my days, nights were different. Nights were honest. One Sunday afternoon, I sat in my living room looking at old photo albums. Daniel at 5 holding a plastic baseball bat. Daniel at 10 missing his front tooth. Daniel at 16, taller than me, smiling with that shy pride. I ran my finger over the pictures and whispered, "Where did we go?" Not where did he go, where did we go? Because it felt like we had both disappeared from each other's lives. 2 months passed before Daniel visited again. He came alone. I could tell something was heavy on his mind the moment he walked in. His shoulders were tight. His smile did not last long. "Mom," he said, sitting down at the kitchen table, "Emily and I have been talking." My heart began to beat faster. "That's good," I said gently. He took a deep breath. "We're thinking about moving." "Moving?" I repeated. "Out of state. Maybe Seattle. There's a big opportunity for her there." Seattle? Across the country? For a moment, I couldn't speak. "That's far," I finally said. "It's a great step for us," he replied quickly. "For our future." "Us." I nodded slowly. "And your job?" I asked. "I can transfer or find something new." He said it like it was simple, like distance was just a number on a map. "When would this happen?" I asked. "Maybe in 6 months." 6 months? Half a year to prepare to lose my son in a way that felt permanent. "I see," I said softly. He looked at me carefully. "Mom, please don't make this harder." I blinked. I'm not. But inside, something was trembling. That night, after he left, I stood in the kitchen for a long time. I imagined his empty childhood bedroom becoming something else in my mind, a storage room, a memory. I had always believed that no matter how busy life became, he was still close enough to reach. Seattle felt like a final door closing. A week later, I did something I had never done before. I drove to their house without calling. Not to argue, not to fight, just to see him. I told myself I would stay 5 minutes.
When I pulled into the driveway, I saw a moving company truck parked outside. My heart dropped. Boxes were already being loaded. I stepped out of my car slowly. Daniel came out the front door carrying a box. He froze when he saw me. "Mom?" he said. "Are you moving already?" I asked. He looked uncomfortable. "We decided to move sooner. The opportunity came fast." "And you didn't tell me?" "We were going to," he said quickly. "Things just got busy." Busy. Again. Emily walked out behind him. "Oh, Linda, hi." Her voice was calm. "We didn't want to stress you until everything was confirmed." Stress me? As if I were fragile, as if I could not handle the truth. I looked at Daniel. "You were going to leave without telling me?" "That's not fair," he said. "We were going to call." "When?" He didn't answer. Silence filled the driveway. The sound of boxes sliding into the truck felt louder than it should have. "I would have helped," I said quietly. "I would have packed. I would have cooked. I would have done anything." Emily crossed her arms gently. "We thought it would be easier this way." Easier? For who? I felt something inside me shift. Not anger, not rage. Clarity. "Daniel," I said, looking directly at him, "are you happy?" He hesitated. Emily answered first. Of course he is. But I was not looking at her. I asked him. Daniel swallowed. "Yes, I am." The words sounded practiced. Not false, just repeated. I nodded slowly. "Then that's all that matters." He stepped closer. "Mom, please understand, this is our life." "I do understand," I said. And in that moment, I truly did. I understood that my place in his life had changed, not because he stopped loving me, but because loving me had become inconvenient. I went home and sat at my kitchen table for hours. I thought about every moment of the past year, every conversation, every time he repeated her concerns as his own, and I realized something painful. My son did not wake up one day and decide I was too much. He was slowly convinced that healthy distance meant emotional separation, that independence meant silence, and loyalty to his wife required quiet withdrawal from his mother. He thought he was protecting his marriage. He did not see that he was slowly erasing a part of himself. The final break came 3 days before they left. Daniel called. "Mom, can you come by tomorrow? We want to say goodbye properly." Properly? I almost laughed. But I said, of course. The next day, their house was half empty, walls bare, echoes in every room. Emily hugged me lightly. "We'll stay in touch," she said. I nodded. Daniel walked me into what used to be their living room. "Mom, I need you to promise something." "What is it?" "Please don't make this move harder for us." I stared at him. "I haven't," he said. "I know, but sometimes you look at me like you're leaving me." "You are," I said gently. He looked hurt. "That's not fair." "No," I replied softly. "It's not." There were so many things I wanted to say. I wanted to tell him that love is not competition, that marriage does not require abandonment, that mothers do not disappear just because a new family is formed. But I looked at his face, and I saw confusion, not cruelty, not hate, just a man trying to balance two worlds and slowly choosing one. So instead, I stepped forward and hugged him. "I am proud of you," I whispered. His arms tightened around me. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too." When I walked out of that house, I knew something had ended, not my love for him, but my place at the center of his life. The moving truck doors slammed shut behind me, and with that sound, I understood. This was the turning point, not because he moved away, but because I finally stopped chasing him. I would no longer try to prove my worth. I would no longer shrink myself to fit inside someone else's boundaries. If my son wanted distance, I would give it to him, fully, completely, and quietly. After Daniel and Emily moved to Seattle, the silence became real. Not the kind of silence that waits for a phone to ring, the kind that settles in and makes itself comfortable. The first week, I kept checking my phone out of habit. Time difference confused me. I would think, it's dinner time there. Maybe he'll call. Sometimes he did. The calls were polite, short, careful. "How's the weather there, Mom?" "It's fine, sweetheart." "How's the new apartment?" I would ask. "It's good, smaller than we expected." Emily's voice was often somewhere in the background, not unkind, just present. I learned to keep my stories brief. I stopped saying, "I miss you." Instead, I said, "I hope you're settling in." After a month, the calls became less frequent, not dramatically, just slowly. Once a week turned into once every 2 weeks, then sometimes longer. I told myself this was normal. Adults get busy. Life moves forward. But one evening, I realized something surprising. I had gone an entire day without thinking about calling him. That scared me at first. Then I understood it was not because I loved him less. It was because I was tired of waiting. I began focusing on myself in ways I never had before. For 35 years, my identity had been Daniel's mom. Now I had to remember who Linda was. I painted the spare bedroom a soft blue. I donated old clothes I no longer wore. I rearranged the living room furniture just because I could. At first, the changes felt strange. Then they felt freeing. I started volunteering twice a week at the community center. I helped children with reading. Some of them reminded me of Daniel when he was young, quiet, thoughtful, careful with their words. One little boy named Marcus used to stay after class. "My mom works late," he explained, so I would sit with him until she arrived. One afternoon, he looked up at me and said, "You're nice, you listen." Those words warmed something inside me that had been cold for months. I still had something to give. 3 months after the move, Daniel called unexpectedly on a Tuesday night. His voice sounded tired. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Did you ever feel like you lost yourself when you were married?" The question surprised me. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Why?" There was a long pause. "Just asking." I did not push. I had learned that pushing only built walls. Instead, I said gently, "Marriage is about building something together, but you should never disappear inside it." He did not answer right away. "Yeah, I guess," he said finally. That night, after we hung up, I sat quietly. For the first time in months, I did not feel replaced. I felt remembered. Not everything changed quickly. Emily still kept her distance. When she spoke to me on speakerphone, her tone was polite but measured. "Hi, Linda. Hope you're well." "I am, thank you." I stopped trying to win her approval. I stopped analyzing her tone. I stopped searching for hidden meaning. Peace came when I stopped fighting a battle she did not even see. 6 months passed. Winter came again. One afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Daniel stood there, alone. For a second, I thought I was imagining him. "Hi, Mom." I blinked. "Daniel?" He smiled weakly. "I had a conference in Chicago. I rented a car." "You drove all this way?" "Yeah." I stepped aside quickly. "Come in." He looked thinner, older somehow, but when he hugged me, he held on tightly. We sat at the kitchen table, just like always. "I didn't tell Emily I was coming," he said quietly. That surprised me. "Is everything okay?" I asked. He stared at his hands. "I don't know." Silence filled the room, but it was not heavy like before. It was honest. "Mom, when we moved, I thought creating distance was healthy. I thought that's what I was supposed to do." I listened. But somewhere along the way, I started feeling disconnected from you, from myself. I did not rush to speak. He continued, "I didn't notice it at first. It was gradual. Like you said once, small shifts." My heart ached at his choice of words. "I never wanted to lose you," he said. "You didn't lose me," I replied softly. "I was always here." He looked up at me, eyes shining slightly. "I'm sorry." That was all he said. Not dramatic, not loud, just sorry. And in that moment, I realized something important. I had spent months thinking Emily had taken him from me, But the truth was more complicated. Daniel had been trying to be a good husband, and in doing that, he thought he had to shrink other relationships. He had not meant to hurt me, he just had not noticed the cost. "I forgive you," I said simply. He exhaled like he had been holding his breath for a long time. We did not blame Emily. We did not argue about the past. We talked instead about balance, about how love is not a limited resource, about how a son can be a husband and still remain a son. "I need to learn how to set boundaries in a healthy way," he admitted, "and I need to learn not to take distance as rejection." We both smiled. Growth is rarely one-sided. He stayed for 2 days. We cooked together, we laughed about old memories, we looked through photo albums. At one point, he picked up a picture of himself at age 8. "You really did everything for me," he said quietly. "I did what mothers do," I replied. On his last morning, he stood by the door holding his suitcase. "Emily and I are working through some things," he said carefully. "I hope you both find peace," I answered. He hugged me again, longer this time. "Call me," I said gently. "I will," he promised, and this time I believed him. After he left, the house was quiet again, but it did not feel empty, it felt steady, because something had shifted, not in distance, but in awareness. He saw me again, not as pressure, not as obligation, but as part of his story, and I saw him not as a little boy who needed protection, but as a man learning his own lessons. The calls became more regular after that, not daily, not constant, but real. Sometimes he would ask my opinion. Sometimes he would simply say, "I just wanted to hear your voice." Emily remained polite, careful, but no longer defensive. I sensed she felt less threatened once I stopped trying to hold on. Sometimes letting go is the only way to stay connected.
It's been almost a year since Daniel and Emily moved to Seattle. Our lives have settled into a new rhythm. I call less often than I used to, and he calls less often than he once did. But the calls we do have, they are real, honest, warm. Sometimes when he picks up the phone and says, "Hi, Mom," it feels like no time has passed, like the distance was only a shadow, not a wall. I learned something important during these months. Love does not vanish just because life changes. It does not disappear because a child chooses a new path. It does not end when roles shift or when boundaries are drawn. It stretches, sometimes painfully, but it always has the capacity to hold more than we think. I also learned that letting go is not giving up. For months, I blamed Emily. I blamed myself. I blamed the circumstances. I believed that if I just tried harder, showed up more, did more, somehow I could keep my son close. But love is not about holding. It is about trusting. Trusting your child to grow, to choose, to stumble, to succeed. And trusting yourself to remain a constant presence, no matter the distance. There were quiet nights when I sat alone in my house, missing him. I admit it. There were moments when I would look at his empty childhood bedroom and feel a hollow ache in my chest. But in that same space, I began filling the silence with new life. I painted, I read, I volunteered, I met friends for coffee. I relearned who I was outside of being mom. It was not easy, but it was necessary. Because you cannot pour from an empty cup, and sometimes a mother's love is strongest when it waits quietly, without interference, without expectation, without demand. When Daniel visited, I no longer measured the time or fretted over whether Emily liked my gift or my advice. We simply shared life again. We laughed at old stories, we talked about new ones, we cooked meals together, and we hugged, long, unhurried hugs that reminded us both of what mattered most. And in the quiet moments, I saw that he had grown. He had learned to balance love and duty, marriage and family, independence and connection. And I had grown too. I learned patience, acceptance, and the quiet strength of letting go.
The hardest lesson was understanding that distance does not mean loss. Daniel may be far away physically, but he is still close in memory, in heart, in the small rituals we maintain. And I realized something I wish I had known sooner. A child can grow up, and a mother's love can remain. Even when boundaries are drawn, even when lives move in separate directions, the bond does not break, it only evolves. I often think back to that day when Emily first asked for boundaries. At the time, it felt like rejection, a final push away. Now, I understand it as a turning point, not a wall, but a doorway. A doorway to a new kind of relationship, one built on respect, understanding, and quiet, patient love. Because love does not cling, love does not demand, love waits, and sometimes, in waiting, it grows stronger than ever. I still miss him sometimes. I still ache when I look at the empty chair at the kitchen table, but the pain is softer now, less like loss, more like remembrance. I remember the little boy you used to call me every day, the teenager who stayed home to care for me, and the man who finally returned to visit, bringing honesty, apology, and love. And I smile, because I know this: love endures, it adapts, it survives distance, disagreement, and time, and in the end, that is all that matters. So to anyone listening who feels the distance of a child, a loved one, or even a friend, let go without resentment, love without demand, trust without fear, and you will discover, as I did, that love always finds a way back, even quietly, even slowly, even when it feels like it might be gone forever.